Many more NHL teams have decided the futures of some of their top prospects, assigning some back to junior, some are going to the American League. We also have some other players on waivers, and we have a couple NHL signings to discuss today. All that and more coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. If you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, we have a lot of NHL roster information to discuss here today. A lot of players have been sent back to the minors. A lot of these are top prospects we've discussed here at great length before. Some of them were expected to make their NHL clubs. There are a few surprises on this list. And there's also some guys that are put through waivers for the purpose of being assigned to the minors. Some of them including a veteran goaltender, as well as some other guys that have got new contracts here out of some professional tryouts. So let's jump right in here. We have a lot to cover in today's video. So let's get started here with a couple signings. First of all, we have Merkley, who signed a contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, he was with the Blue Jackets at the end of last year. They picked him up at the trade deadline from the Oilers. He wasn't actually re-signed by the Jackets at that point, and he ended up going to the Florida Panthers training camp on a professional tryout. Now, he was released from that tryout without a new contract, but he was then brought back to Columbus on a two-way deal. So Merkley has now signed a one-year deal with Columbus, but it's a two-way contract. Which means they can obviously pay him a lower salary in the minors. Now, upon signing that contract, he was placed on waivers for the purpose of being signed to their American Hockey League affiliate. So Merkley is with the Blue Jackets, but he is going to start the year in the American Hockey League. But at least they do have an NHL veteran in the minors for call-up purposes later should they require his services. Now, also getting a contract was Brandon Davidson here of the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, he, again, went to camp on a PTO with the Blackhawks. As we know, Brandon Davidson's bounced around a lot here in the past couple of years. Mainly had short-term deals, been claimed through waivers. He's really had a lot of activity in his short NHL career, but he went to camp with the Hawks this year on a tryout, earned himself a contract as a league minimum $650,000 just for the 1 year. So he will be staying with Chicago for this season, at least for now. I mean, if Brandon Davidson's history holds up here, he very well could be on the move before the end of the year. And of course, with the Hawks, season not real certain right now, especially with Corey Crawford, his health kind of being a concern. So if things don't go well for the Hawks this year, Davidson's certainly another trade chip to be on the move here yet again by the deadline. Now, we also have a veteran goaltender. Al Montoya of the Edmonton Oilers is on waivers as well for the purpose of being assigned to the American Hockey League. So obviously, Al Montoya's bounced around a fair bit in his NHL career. He's had times where he's been a pretty solid backup in the NHL. So it's hard to say at this point if he'll be claimed or not. More than likely he doesn't and goes to the American Hockey League. Obviously, the Oilers brought in Koskinen from the KHL, obviously, to compete with Cam Talbot. And Talbot's looked a lot better here in training camp as well. So assuming Montoya clears waivers, he'll go to Bakersfield and obviously will be a call-up option should anybody get hurt. But, with the goaltending situation the way it is in the NHL, I wouldn't expect him to get claimed, but I guess time will tell here. Obviously, the Maple Leafs are going to have some tough decisions to make. They're likely going to have a goalie or two going on the waiver wire in the very near future here, unless they make a trade or something beforehand. But as we come close to the wrap-up here at training camp, obviously they have to make a decision. And it does look like, based on indications, that they're going to be sticking with Curtis McElhinney as the backup. At least that's how things look based on their practice rosters and how things have been going with their skates and their practices. So if that's the case, then Garrett Sparks as well as Calvin Pickard will need to go on waivers to go back to the American Hockey League. So they would probably be a little bit more of an attractive option for teams might be looking to acquire a goaltender more so than Al Montoya. So if there are any NHL teams out there that may be interested in upgrading their backup goalie situation or maybe adding a third goalie to their mix, then I would say that they're probably kind of waiting to see what the Leafs do, because those two options are certainly more attractive, where you have Pickard with NHL experience and didn't do too bad when he was in Colorado. And then obviously you have Garrett Sparks, who was the AHL goalie of the year and, was terrific in their run towards the Calder Cup last season. So I guess we'll see what the Leafs do. They haven't put anybody on waivers as of the recording of this video. So we'll see how they go here, but they do have to make some decisions here soon. As of right now, it looks like McElhinney is going to stick as the backup to Freddie Andersson. Some other top prospect players that have been reassigned either to the American Hockey League or junior. So let's get started here with a couple players going back to their junior clubs. First up, we got San Jose Sharks have reassigned their first-round pick this year, defenseman Ryan Merkley, back to the OHL. Merkley did last pretty long in Sharks training camp, did surprise a few, looked pretty decent from what I could see. I didn't get to see a whole lot of his play, but based on reports I've read and stuff, he did look pretty solid and certainly made some good impressions for his first training camp. Wouldn't be a big shock to possibly see him get a crack maybe next year. If the San Jose Sharks end up signing Erik Karlsson to a long-term deal, plus you've already got Burns and Vlasic under contract for, a fair bit of time as well, and with some of the other guys that have been there for a while, to kind of round out their top six, it is going to be a little harder for a young defenseman like Merkley to crack that lineup. But either way, he made some good impressions, and we'll see how what the future holds for Merkley in San Jose. But he certainly looks like he's capable of making the jump to the NHL here at some point in time. Edmonton Oilers have reassigned forward Ryan McLeod back to the OHL as well. Now, Ryan McLeod had a very impressive training camp, especially for being a 2018 second-round pick. I mean, many projected him to go in the first round in 2018, but he didn't. He slipped down. Oilers grabbed him with a high second-round pick, and it certainly looked like it's paid off so far. I mean, he had an awesome training camp, was turning heads. There was some talk about maybe staying, but there's just too many forwards in that group, and the Oilers have really had a surge here of some other quality forwards having some tremendous training camps like Ty Ratty and Jesse Puljujarvi and Keiler Yamamoto. So as much as Ryan McLeod certainly made a lot of great impressions, there just really isn't room to keep him at this point, and really it's not going to hurt him at all from having another year at junior. Hopefully he can go back and really dominate, probably get a shot at playing on Team Canada's World Junior Club. That would be big for him as well, and see how much he can continue to develop here. But the Oilers, I think, are quite pleased with their second-round selection so far. We have a bunch of other top prospects that have been signed to their American Hockey League affiliates, and some of these certainly came as a surprise. I really thought a few of these guys would have had an excellent shot at making their rosters out of training camp, but I guess they'll have to prove themselves to the American Hockey League a little further and earn themselves a call-up. And that's the main one I'm talking about here is the New York Rangers' Lias Andersson. I really thought Andersson and Hedl both would make the Rangers club this year. So far, Hedl's still on the club. Looks like he's going to make it, but they've decided to keep prospect Brett Howden instead. Obviously, Howden came over in the trade from Tampa Bay with Ryan McDonough and JT Miller last year, so another great prospect. Personally, I thought Lias Andersson might have a little bit of a leg up on Howden to make the roster, and that Howden might go to the American Hockey League first, but I guess they've gone the other way around here, and they decided to keep Brett Howden so far. It is possible that the Rangers may make an additional cut or two here, so the roster's not set in stone, but as of right now, Lias Andersson is going to start the year in the American Hockey League. The Ottawa Senators have made a couple demotions as well, assigning defenseman Christian Redlanen and forward Philip Schlappick to the American Hockey League. Obviously, that also both of those players really come as a surprise based on their training camps. Redlanen obviously played college hockey, signed his contract towards the end of last year, got into a handful of games with the Senators towards the end of the year. I think he played 7 or 8 games, something like that. He looked really good, and actually, I thought he had a really good training camp as well. But the Sens have actually had a couple other defensemen in camp also kind of surprise everybody and, basically kind of move him down the depth chart here, I guess, a little bit. Like the main defenseman in Senators camp that's surprised a lot was Max Lajoie. Lajoie was not expected to push for a spot so hard like he has, and he certainly kind of, made some tough decisions here. But I guess for now, Redlanen will go to the American Hockey League. And Schlappick, too, really, I thought Schlappick would probably be the 3rd or 4th center, but I guess they've decided to put him in the American Hockey League as well, which is going to make room to keep some other prospects in Ottawa like Brady Tkachuk, as well as Alex Formenton, who are definitely locks at this point to make the club. The Colorado Avalanche have also made a few cuts as well, sending forward Martin Kaut and goalie Pavel Francouz to the American Hockey League. Not too big of a surprise here. Obviously, Kaut is a pretty solid prospect that we've discussed here before. I'm not surprised to see him go to the American Hockey League for right now, but I do suspect he will become a full-time NHLer at some point. Same with Francouz, obviously, who they brought over from Europe. He's from the Czech Republic. He's a pretty solid goalie. At some point, though, I think he'll get an opportunity along with Philip Grubauer to form the main tandem here. Obviously, Semyon Varlamov is in the final year of his contract, and it's not really clear what his future holds in Colorado. So I could see them potentially moving on from him at some point, either if it's not this year, during the season, the next offseason for sure. And I could see Francouz, if he performs well, along with Grubauer, being a goalie tandem here going into next year. So time will tell, but the Avs have made a few roster cuts there as well. The Vancouver Canucks have also made a few roster cuts, and a little bit of a surprise, but not a complete shocker here. Both these guys were expected to battle for positions, but really shouldn't come as a huge surprise that they're going to start off in the American Hockey League, and that's defenseman Olli Juolevi and forward Adam Gaudette. Obviously, Juolevi was a high draft pick for the Canucks here a few years back, and I know a lot of fans are kind of getting impatient, waiting for him to jump into the lineup and make an impact. But obviously, they felt that going to the American Hockey League was the best thing for his development for right now. Now, Gaudette, on the other hand, was a little bit of a late bloomer, was a star in college hockey, came in last year, didn't do too bad, but it certainly wasn't a big star right away, which is really not a fair expectation anyway. And Gaudette, as much as he does have a lot of potential to become a regular NHLer in the future here, with all the veteran forwards that the Canucks signed this offseason, they brought in Jay Beagle, Antoine Roussel, Tim Schaller, they still have guys like Sutter and Gagne, Granlund on the lineup, so obviously that's taking up spots that they can't have too many young guys here in the lineup. Obviously, Lias will be the main rookie kind of starting in that forward group this year. Gaudette will start in the American Hockey League, but if he does well, really, I can't see why he couldn't earn himself a potential call-up later on. I mean, the Canucks aren't expected to be overly competitive this year, so I would imagine, especially later into the season, that they very well will get a lot of their youngsters potentially coming up for some auditions, like a Gaudette or, even Jonathan Dahl and Cole Lynn, some other guys here that certainly, have a potential future with the club as well. The Vegas Golden Knights have assigned defenseman Eric Brandstrom to their American Hockey League affiliate as well. It was looking like at one point that Brandstrom might very well earn himself a roster spot. Most of that, though, was going down before they got Shea Theodore under contract. But even with Nate Schmidt being suspended for the first 20 games, I kind of wondered if they might keep Brandstrom around for at least a little while before they bring him down to the minors and get him a chance to start the season. But I guess they've opted not to do that. Obviously, Brandstrom, as well as his fellow prospect defenseman here, Nicholas Hag of the Vegas Golden Knights, both had tremendous training camps, in my opinion. Both look pretty solid. I mean, certainly some weaknesses, being rookies, and top prospects. You're bound to see some mistakes there, especially as defensemen. So it wasn't perfect, but they were impressive. And I certainly imagine that they do have a future with this team at the NHL level. Just not quite yet, so they're going to send Brandstrom down to start the year at the American Hockey League level. So that is all your news and notes here out of NHL training camps here for today. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. Make sure you leave some comments as well. What do you think of these moves? Are you surprised that any of these prospects are not starting at the NHL? There's a fair bit of talent going to be in the American Hockey League. So I guess we'll just have to be a little bit more patient to see some of these NHL prospects make their debuts. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.